Welcome to the Cultivating Business Growth podcast, bringing you bi-weekly discussions designed to help you grow your business and create the lifestyle you desire. Elevate your business with proven strategies from virtual CFOs, CPAs, and business advisors. We discuss real-world challenges solved with actionable steps that get you the results you need, both in business and building the life you deserve.
Welcome to episode number 169 of the Cultivating Business Growth podcast, brought to you by Willow Virtual CFO. When is the last time you gave your business a checkup? Not just looked at sales, but really assessed how things are going. In today's episode, we're walking through a business health check to help you evaluate where your business stands and how to improve it. So I have with me Katina Peters for today's episode. Hello and welcome.
Hey, Megan. Always fun to be here doing this. I like my time on the podcast with you.
Yeah. It's become a fun thing versus a dreaded thing, I think, for everybody on the team now. When we started in 2019, it wasn't always that way. But now it's a more relaxed, fun experience than it used to be. So
yes, for sure. Totally agree with you. Yes, it was it's one of those funny things about life, like something you haven't done is always like scary and it's hard and it's those kinds of things. And then do it, you push yourself, you challenge yourself to do it, and then you do it for a while and you're like, oh, well, this is actually good. This is fun.
I can actually enjoy this. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So it's pretty cool.
So we want to kind of set the expectations for this episode, and what we've put together is a simple DIY framework so that you can kind of take a look at things yourself in your business and just get a high level view of what the business health is for you specifically. We'll talk about 4 core areas of business health, the role of a business financial health check with an expert, and tools and resources that we have here at Willow, like our Willow Cultivator, that can go even deeper and help you get a better sense of how you're doing. So to start off with, Katina, can you help us understand what a business health check is?
Yes, absolutely. I think, we talk a lot about, being strategic and planning and doing things that we need to do. But part of that is really making sure that we're stopping and taking a moment, right, to step back from business and to look at things. And so, a business health check is really kind of that, kind of what you would expect going to a doctor and getting just like a physical, normal annual checkup, right? So you can do a health check at any time, right? Just like you can do with the doctor, you can do it with the business as well. So, you're looking at things like performance, profitability, how are operations going, alignment with your growth goals. So really taking that time to stop and question what's going on, question, did we get off track somewhere, making sure that things are working the way they need to work. And, kind of looking for identifying issues that, maybe start off small, but become big problems down the line. So it's kind of like, that prevention, detection, diagnosis, right? Just like you do with your own health, early detection and prevention is always the best key, right? To making sure that you don't have long-term problems down the road, and to be able to put those stopgap, solutions and whatever that looks like to prevent a problem, and then giving yourself enough time to really find a good solution and treatment plan, so to speak, right? So yeah, that's the overarching, kind of holistic view of it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I love that. And the focus on kind of that preventative care or preventative maintenance versus we don't ever want to get to the ER visit, right? With our business or our bodies. Right. So really having somebody that's an expert that can help you take a look at those things that, this looks like it could be, and right now it's a manageable issue. Let's take care of it before it becomes something bigger. So. Right. Yep. So we talked about giving a framework for doing a DIY business financial health check. How can business owners kind of do something on their own to get some sense of how they're doing? Obviously, having an expert come in and doing these things is going to give you a better confidence in what that looks like, but there are some things that they can do themselves. So what are those?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that similarly, we can use the doctor, we can use the mechanic. Like, of course, whoever's in that profession is going to have a wider breadth of knowledge and experience to draw from in looking at these things. But just like we can do in our personal lives, like we know if, we're not just not quite feeling right, or we're just not, my car's making a weird noise, or, things like that. So you kind of have, at least some diagnostics that you can, do yourself, so to speak, before maybe involving a professional, just to kind of do a check-in, So, I think, the probably the four major things that we would want to assess or take a look at when we're doing this is profitability. That's a big thing. So profitability, and then it's followed by cash flow, but profitability is a leading indicator of cash flow, typically speaking. So, maybe you have cash now, but if you're not profitable and you continue to have unprofitable months in the year, what have you, ultimately that's obviously going to affect your cash flow in the business as well. So profitability is something that you want to definitely be monitoring regularly, at least monthly, analyzing, looking at it. But in stopping and doing a health check, you probably want to do like a look back, let's say, over the last 6 months. We love to do mid-year checks of things. A mid-year check is a really healthy thing to do for a business because you got that 6 months. You kind of have here's where we are so far into the year. It's a good time to see, are we lining up with our goals or not? But yeah, so looking at that profitability month over month for 6 months and kind of seeing what the trend looks like, making sure it's okay to have an unprofitable month here and there if you have to, if things don't always go according to plan, but making sure we don't have that trend happening and things that are going to eventually have long-term problems. So looking at your gross profit margins, looking at your net profit margins, percentages, you want to make sure that, you're looking healthy from that perspective. So, and then cash flow, I know we beat on cash flow a lot, but it's really important. So looking at cash flow, because as profitability is a trend indicator and a leader as far as what's going to happen with cash flow, you can also have other cash flow problems that don't specifically align with just profitability. You may be very profitable, but your cash flow is not coming out that way. You're feeling like you never have money or something along those lines. So that's where you want to make sure, okay, is, that, because that would be the first sign. Let's stop and take a look at our cash flow. Are we borrowing too much? Are we constantly on our line of credit? Are we using lots of credit cards, or something like that? So stop and take a look at those types of things, because those are definitely like those indicators of we're having a cash flow issue that sometimes can be masked, by businesses because they're using those credits, which, we want to have credit. We want to use credit. We want to use it wisely, but we don't want to depend on it and rely on it and dig ourselves further, into a hole. So making sure we're doing that. And I know we talked about with cash flow, are your collections going well? Are we getting behind? Do we have bad debts in there somewhere that we really need to recognize? And because, we may be showing profit, but if we never collect the money, it's not really helping us as a business, right? We need the money in the bank. Show me the cash, right? So, so we need to look at those cash flow trends as well. So expenses, as far as profitability, not just looking at profitability, but are your expenses in alignment? Do things, are you starting to pay more for something than, maybe you didn't notice, but you're seeing this trend, it's going up. And, some of that can be inflation. Some of that you can't do anything about it. Some things, though, you can make different choices. You can go to different vendors. You can, clear up, okay, maybe I don't need this or that subscription. I mean, we started it. It's not really what we need, whatever. Just make sure you kind of hone in on really questioning those things and making sure that you're being responsible with your expenses. So I'm going to take the time also in a health check to look at those expense line items. And of course, I know we talked about, you can look at it with industry metrics to kind of see, are you in alignment or not? But also historically, just like what's been going on too. Okay. Yeah. And then pricing, you want to be consistent about looking at your pricing. Like, I just mentioned inflation, for example. So if we're starting to see our profitabilities maybe shrinking down a little bit as we go, and our expenses may be coming up because, inflation, and, if we're being responsible and, we've done everything we can with our expenses. Inflation is a thing. It happens, so we need to make sure that we're pricing in, that type of stuff, and we're stopping and saying, okay, we're paying more in inflation and salaries and, whatever that looks like. We need to make sure that our pricing is keeping pace with that, and that we're putting those stopgaps in to make those pricing adjustments. Either hopefully more frequently, but in this health check, definitely we want to be questioning, is our pricing good? Is it in line? Is it, what can we do about that? But, periodically you want to have that in place too, so that you're just maybe doing at least an annual pricing adjustment, or maybe more frequently if needed. So.
Great. And it can obviously be a big indicator that you need maybe some more help or a more expertise potentially if you can't answer those questions, or maybe you go to your bookkeeper, or you have a controller, you're having a little bit of a hard time getting that clarity on these things. That's when it might be a sign that, okay, maybe we need somebody to help us, come in here and analyze these things so that we do have a sense of where we stand.
Right. Definitely. Yep. For sure.
So as a CFO, like I know you mentioned, you are very holistic in your approach, and you're not just looking at one side of the business. So there are other things other than the financial side that I know you kind of can help guide, or help find vendors that can help with other things. So what are some other things to consider that might not just be these 4 areas that we talked about as far as profitability, cash flow, expenses, and pricing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a business is a whole thing, right? Just like your body is a whole thing. So we just, obviously we're a little more focused on the financial side. However, we know that business takes, like you said, all these pieces fitting together as far as what needs to be looked at. So, looking at operations and strategy and those types of things are also something that we want to have conversations around, because in order to have that business thrive and grow and achieve its goals, you need to be looking at those things too. So some things that you can take a look at are things like time management. Looking at, are you and those people that are driving revenue, especially in the business, you being the owner, it's important to use your time wisely and spend your time doing very high value things for the business. And then, maybe if you have people obviously that are driving revenue with you too, making sure that you're keeping them as free from just time-sucking activities, I guess you could say, and kind of at their highest and best use. So sometimes doing like a time study once a year or periodically to say, maybe you don't keep timesheets every day. A lot of companies, right, don't do that. Not keeping a timesheet on every single activity that they're doing during the day, which is totally acceptable. But maybe doing a time study of a period of time, a week, a month, depending, to say, okay, what are you having to spend your time on? Not, we're not looking to bash anybody over it. And sometimes you have to definitely explain what you're doing to people because they feel like you're, micromanaging or, doing things like that. Yeah. Which what we're really trying to do is just, more than anything, is not evaluate necessarily the person and their inefficiencies, which is sometimes how they look at it. We're trying to evaluate the system to say, how do we make the system better to help them do what they need to do in a more efficient manner. So you definitely have to talk about that. But if you're doing a time study, you'd be like, okay, what are you spending your time on each day of the week? Just, so we can kind of get an idea. And if you find, okay, well, we're having to do all these administrative things, that, okay, do we have to do those things? Can we create a different system to do those things better? Can we hire somebody, an administrator, to help maybe 5 people accomplish those same tasks that they're all having to do, and they can level up what they're doing and bring more money in for the business, things like that. And that definitely can, you're hiring somebody, so that's a cost, but typically you see much more fold in that cost coming back to you in those higher level activities that are happening and generating revenue. So that's another good thing to look at. Team and systems. Kind of a similar analysis that we just talked about, but, Do you have the right people in the right seats? Do you have the right team members doing the things they should be doing? Are they focusing on the right things? So kind of bleeding from time management over into that, or are we missing a team member that we really need? And we've, sometimes especially in growth phases, right? You wear more hats in a smaller company. Almost everybody does, right? So as you grow, you can't hold all those hats anymore because the hats get fuller, each one of them. So you have to kind of parse off stuff and be like, okay, I can't do this and this and this. I need one of those things to be taken over by another role. Whether that's you or the rest of your team. So you have to assess it kind of who's doing what, and is it becoming too large of a role or job for them? And we need to split that apart as we grow, because it's very common to have to do. So looking at that, also looking at, your systems. Are they still operating efficiently, effectively? There's systems that work at a smaller size that don't work great at a larger size. There's obviously lots of new systems all the time coming out that can make more efficiencies and things like that. So it's just good to step back and say, what systems are we using? Do we still like those systems? What things work well, what things don't work well? No system is ever 100% what we want it to be or works 100% the way we want it to. And looking at that, are there places we can make improvements to the systems? And I'm talking about technology somewhat, but also, just procedural systems too. You have to call into question, like, what are we doing and why are we doing it? We always have done this process. Well, that doesn't make it the best process. Maybe we need to change the process. And having that mindset, ongoing with your team is always a good thing to do too. But stopping and looking and spending a little time, like, okay, what's working, what's not working, questions is definitely beneficial to stop and do that along the way. So, and then from all of this, what is your strategic goals? We've talked about setting those out, setting quarterly goals or rocks, managing over those, but also just having a good check-in on those. Like we said, halfway through the year, looking back, okay, this is what we planned to do. Where are we at with everything? What have we accomplished? What have we not accomplished? And most of the time, looking at the next 6 months, some things will stay the same, but a lot of times you find that your direction shifts as you go through the year. And you're like, okay, well, what we were planning at the beginning of the year, we now know more, right? As we've gone through the year, we know more stuff. So we're going to change our trajectory into going forward. So, looking at that, having strategic clarity about where you're trying to get to and breaking down some of those major goals that you need to set out. So just looking at those kinds of things. That's kind of more, again, like I said, that holistic, like, what can I do to make the business better, and having that health assessment on the business and the different pieces and parts that pertain to it. So,
yeah, that's fantastic. And I think that gives a really good kind of checklist for business owners as they're going through to, if you do have somebody, maybe you do have a bookkeeper or a controller that is handling those things, to kind of go through as a team and review these things and make sure that they're on track, making sense. And like I said, if you don't know where you stand, that's where business assessment tools like our Willow Cultivator can really come in and provide a huge benefit to your business, because you can get a sense of where you stand and maybe where some opportunities lie to improve. So can you talk a little bit about this business assessment tool and how it can help provide some clarity?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I jump into the assessment tool specifically, I did want to just kind of bring up that all this assessment that we're talking about, and especially the financial side of the assessment, relies on good data and information. We've found that a lot of the clients, I would say at least 90% of the people that come to work with us, we have to do some sort of fixing of their books to get them up to par. And these are not all small companies. We have an over $50 million company that came and we needed to do that with. We have, $30 million companies that came and, they've, not that they don't have books, not that they don't have stuff, and they have other people working on them, but you're the business owner in business, doing construction, doing law, doing what you do. and you're kind of assuming that the financials are okay because you have people doing them. So you don't know if the checks and balances are in place for the right things to be done. So I'm just putting that out there because you might think that everything is done correctly and right and all those types of things, but this can also be a good tool to check and see if it is. And, if it is, we'll tell you it is. But like I said, 90% of the clients that we work with, it's not, because they haven't put all the right processes and procedures in place from an accounting perspective to make sure that they are correct, because you wouldn't know that as an owner. You're not an accounting professional. So, you would need to hire somebody to do that. And as you grow and get bigger, that becomes more complex. And you need more processes and procedures in place. So you definitely have to have the right professional doing that. And the system and process that we use is very meticulous about making sure that things are tied out and accurate, because if you don't have accurate financial data, you're trying to make these decisions, make these assessments, you're really, shooting yourself in the foot, because you're trying to do all this based on false, incorrect information. So I just want to bring that up too, because I think that's something that, people don't understand. Like, if you're paying a tax person to do your tax return, that doesn't mean they're digging in to make sure all your books are correct. That's not what you're hiring them to do. It's not their job. They may ask you some questions about it, but unless you're hiring them and paying them to do those things, they're not doing it. And even if you have somebody doing those things, unfortunately, just like every other situation, not all CPAs, not all CFOs are created equally. Sometimes the job's not getting done the way that it should. So again, this assessment is just a great way to say, let's check. Let's see if it's good or not, right? So, so jumping into the cultivator assessment. So it's very cost effective. We've made it priced very effectively, and we have different levels that you can select from. And we actually have a little selector tool. It's not complicated. Ask like a few questions, and it helps you select if you're like not sure which level you should be operating at. And you can select that level, and we do like kind of a lower level assessment, just basics. And then we do higher level assessment, going a little further beyond into kind of that more holistic approach, like we were talking about. So we look at your current financials and your processes and procedures in place. Like I said, are they done correctly? Where are the problem areas? What do we see as erroneous, et cetera, things like that. We look at your tax returns as well and do an assessment of that. Anything that we see that's concerning or a problem, or just a direction change that you might need to make as you're growing, make different selections. We'll look at those as well. So we do this over a period of a short amount of time, but some time. And in there, again, for each section, we'll tell you the bigger jobs take a little longer. Of course, the smaller ones are a little faster, but they're all fairly fast to get your results back. And so we schedule meetings, we look at your books, we talk to your people, things like that. We talk to you, of course. And then ultimately what we do is we generate a report at the end of that goes through everything we checked out, all the findings that we had, and the recommendations that we will make for you to fix whatever needs to be fixed, not only in the past, but to put a procedure in going forward. So then you'll have that tool and that report coming out of this. And then as we move forward, you can potentially choose to work with us, which we will discuss with you. If you wanted us to be involved in working with you after that, we can do that, and we'll talk about that. But either way, you're going to have this report and recommendations to take and implement, however you choose.
That's great. And you can see all of the different options that are laid out, as well as that assessment that you can take on your own to figure out which one would perhaps be the best for you to pick at willowcfo.com/cultivator. The links for that and anything else that we mentioned in this episode will also be available on the show notes for this episode at willowcfo.com/169. So Katina, as we wrap up and into next steps, I just want to recap a little bit here. The business health check is, like we said, it's a very powerful tool to catch issues, realign, make sure that you're doing your due diligence and that preventative maintenance to make sure that you're growing with intention too, right? We don't want
Right.
to just kind of be flying by the seat of our pants here when we're running a business. So as far as the DIY steps that you can take in reviewing your financials, can you cover those top 4 areas for us just one more time? High level.
Yes, absolutely. So the 4 that you want to do on the financial statement side are profitability, cash flow, expenses, and pricing. So those are the main categories that you want to focus in on as far as from a financial perspective.
Got it. So then the other operational and strategic items that we talked through were your time, your team, and then your strategic plan. And additionally, as you discussed, if you are ready to go deeper, if you want that double check, you want a little more confidence in where you stand right now and maybe where you're heading, tools like our Willow Cultivator can give you a really great outside perspective and some actionable strategy that you walk away with from CFOs that have worked with multiple clients, hundreds of clients that are very happy with that investment and feel like it's really given them a good place to start that they feel more confident in as far as the clarity. Right. So do you want to add anything as we wrap up the episode for today?
I think, like you said, I think having that peace of mind and the clarity of where you stand and knowing that somebody else has kind of checked through things for you, I think that's just a huge thing for business owners. You're not, an expert. We can't all be experts in everything, right? So having somebody that just comes in and can tell you, yes, it's being done good, you guys are all set, or here's the areas you need to work on clearing up, things like that. I think it just definitely, we're all in business, right? I'm a business owner. It's nice to have that just a little bit of backup on the things that you're doing as you're trying to make decisions and do the best that you can for your business. So I do think it's definitely well worth the investment. And as you've stated, people have also said that to us as well. So yeah, it's a good thing to consider for sure.
Fantastic. Well, we hope this has given you that DIY framework that we talked about, as well as some great resources for follow-up and to feel like you have that good foundation moving forward. So thank you again, Katina, for running through all of that for us and helping business owners have a better understanding of how to check in on the pulse of their business. Keep that momentum going, and we will see you next time.